Another week of video games. I can tell you I've done a whole lot of not much this week, but that doesn't mean I have nothing to talk about. I have been getting a bit mouthy with some of these past videos. Alright, I'm gonna start this off with more Guild Wars 2, an addiction that is only gonna end approximately 1 month after Ender Dragon's releases, if the previous 2 expansions are anything to go by. The 4th Elite Specialization event happened, giving access to all of the new Elite specs as well as the new Siege Turtle mount. I got to try the other 6 Elite specs that I missed months before, and I've got a whole lot of not much to say about them. As a Necro main, I tried the Harbinger the most, and I don't see myself using it when the expansion releases. It wasn't all that fun. The elixirs were quite boring, and the primarily ranged playstyle didn't appeal to my love of getting up close and beating ass. The Virtuoso was cool, but I felt like it was a bit of an oversimplification of the Mesmer's main mechanic, which was illusions. I've been trying out a lot of other classes in the game lately to prepare them all for End of Dragons because I still haven't figured out which one I'm going to be using. The Siege Turtle was neat, being the first 2-person mount in the game, but it did feel a bit too sluggish for me to use actively upon release. However, I did find myself in a Dragon Stand map for a daily with multiple Siege Turtles running around blasting the asses off of Mordremoth's minions. That was amusing. During that map, it did dawn on me just how easy and simple mounts have made a good chunk of the game's content. Especially the Sky Scale, which allows you to skip a good chunk of map mechanics and exploration. It was, however, still a lot of fun. To end the Guild Wars 2 segment of the week, there will be more next week, the Return to Champions event started and people are actually doing Dragon Response missions now. Before, it would be mostly a roll of the dice if I would even find one person. Now it's almost always a full lobby. Although I do find these missions to be quite a lot easier with 5 people instead of just 1 or 2. A lot easier. Alright, the next game on this list. Some Pokemon Shining fucking Pearl. Oh boy, do I love the disappointment I feel when I play this game. I now have 4 out of the 8 gym badges and, due to the newly implemented EXP share, now have Pokemon that are at least 10 levels higher than everything else in the area. It seems like the developers added in the new experience share without doing any rebalancing of the original game to accommodate it. The original game, and by extension this remake, have a severe issue with Pokemon variety as well. Most older Pokemon games do, but the remakes should, in theory, not, especially at full AAA price. One of the best aspects of Sword and Shield was the sheer amount of variety there was in both wild Pokemon and trainer battles. Yes, there wasn't a national dex in that game, but the incredibly robust region dex was an immense improvement over previous games. This remake feels like a massive step back, even when compared to the original game, due to the shitty new EXP share and the absolutely ridiculously overpowered friendship system. They added these questionable mechanics of the new games without thinking of how they would fit into the remake. It's kind of ridiculous. And to end off this beautiful week, of course, I played some Genshin fucking Impact. You know this had to be here. A whole new event to play centered on Albedo, except it didn't actually go anywhere. Most of the event, narratively, consisted of Albedo, Amber, Eula, and Bennett just shooting the shit.
Wow, like
they had this really interesting premise of an Albedo imposter that they could have spun an actually interesting mystery out of. Unfortunately, they did a whole lot of fucking nothing with it. I did find what little of Albedo's backstory that was in the first 2 acts to be mildly interesting, but it wasn't anything revolutionary. Most of it, according to my friend, the community already knew very well because Genshin doesn't know how to keep its goddamn mouth shut.
Wait until nighttime.
I understand that some people in the Genshin community like the boring fluff that surrounds the events in this game, but there has to be enough actual narrative substance to keep the sane people from going insane. I was actually interested in the story of this event when it got announced. Too bad all the mystery in its entirety was wasted on some, fairly decent Whopperflower boss extremely quickly.
It's a fucking Whopperflower? Are you fucking kidding me?
The story went from albedo
Oh my
is sus
God.
to albedo
That's
is
so
actually just some
stupid.
muted whopper flower in the span of a few
Fuck
minutes of fucking
a
dialogue.
whopper
It's
flower?
like they expected the few days you had to wait in between acts to fill in for all of the lack
Oh
of
wait, they have this
content
big
there,
build
lack
up
of
only for
narrative
it to be a
cohesion. So
giant
thank you, Genshin Impact
fucking
and MiHoYo.
whopper.
Okay, the boss was
Oh, that's
decent,
so
though.
dumb.
Better than Storm Terror and Ajdaha. Fuck Ajdaha, by the way. It's the worst boss ever added to a video game. But worse than Child in the Saritsa. It's interesting while you're breaking its shield, but it does become a far less interesting fight once the shield is actually broken. A shield that takes over a minute to come back.
Okay,
I
guess
wouldn't
I'll
know
fight
if the
the
shield
giant
actually does
whopper
come back
flower
though.
that
I
is
was only willing to
formerly
wait
Sus
1
Albedo.
minute, and by then the thing was most definitely dead. If you cannot kill this thing
Dumb.
within that 1 minute, then there is something wrong with your party. The other activities, however, varied in quality. The obstacle course was just fine. I always found that whatever engine Genshin uses can't hold up to what the developers want to do with these events, which results in these movement-based events to feel extremely clunky. Like the game's movement system wasn't designed with precision and movement abilities in mind. And as usual with these events, the combat challenges never got very difficult. The difficulty started out in a nice place, but it also ended in basically the exact same place. Easy throughout the entire thing. The activity that involved just hitting ice with fire was boring and extremely unnecessary, probably the only gameplay part of the event that was outright bad. Even so, it wasn't difficult and didn't take long, so it didn't end up pissing me off at all. It seems to just exist to give snowman parts for the snowman building aspect of the event, which I'm also not a fan of. Although I do see how some people would appreciate the ability to build a snowman and slot it down in their teapot. I personally just don't care much for my teapot. I don't think the teapot or the snowman are bad additions to Genshin Impact. They just aren't for me. I play the game primarily for the combat. Well, that was my last week right there. Follow me on Twitter at Land654 for the one thought I have every month, and on Twitch at Land aka Greg if you want to come chat live with me. Don't forget to subscribe, and bye-bye, boyos.